to I Finance Mortgage. I am Tiffanie Phillips. I am your host, and today we are going to be diving into the world of turnkey properties. So with me today, I have the masterminds behind 3-5's Turnkey Properties. And I would like to introduce, we have Nick Weaver, Derek Weaver, and Emily Nesselroad. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. This is just so we can share with the audience, especially people that are trying to get into investments. It's great to know, all the options available. And I know your company has something amazing to offer for them. So let's kind of dive in. Just for our audience who might be new to this, can you first explain what does the turnkey properties mean and makes this a unique investment?
Sure. So a turnkey property to us is a property that's been fully rehabbed. It's going to have a newer roof, a newer heating and ventilation, air conditioning system. It's going to have a newer water heater. All the properties that we sell, they don't have carpet in them. They have either vinyl plank floors or finished hardwood floors. We make sure all the systems are working properly, all the plumbing's working properly, all the electrical's working properly. And when you buy this property, it's going to have a tenant in place already.
Amazing.
And property management in place. So from the time you buy it, if you buy it on the 1st, you're going to collect a month's worth of rent when you close on this property, or even if you close on the the 15th, you're going to get half a month's rent. So you're going to be cash flowing on these properties
Instantly. That's amazing.
Yeah. And these properties that we focus on for turnkey, and we have a lot of California investors we work with because we live in California. Our motto is live where you want to live and invest where it makes sense. And what we mean by that is it's the cost of investing in property in Southern California is very, very high. And these properties that we are selling that are, again, they've been rehabbed, they've got tenants in place and property management in place, they're starting out in the low $100,000 range, and they go up to the low $200,000 range. And these properties cash flow. So what we mean by that is, if you're buying a house for, let's say, $100,000, the rent on this property needs to be at least $700 a month or more in order for it to cash flow. So for us, that purchase to rent ratio needs to be 0.7% or higher in order for it to cash flow. Good luck finding that in California.
No.
It's going to be very hard to find.
It's hard they are not really getting that. Some of these out here in California are looking to be a couple of years before they can get that cash flowing. Correct. So definitely,
it's a different play in California. In California, you're buying, you're hedging on appreciation, which has happened for a lot of us, and we like that about the California market.
We do appreciate it.
Yes.
This method here it's not the get rich quick scheme. It's get rich over time. It's another investment option for the busy professional that's looking to invest in other areas other than the stock market.
Love that. And you could probably get multiple, right?
Absolutely.
Is that kind of the main game plan?
Emily can speak to that as far as kind of what our most popular financing option is from the people we work with and how many they can get.
Sure. I mean, it just depends on what you're working with, what you're wanting to put down. But you think of what you would put down on one California property, for example, and how you can 10x that in a state like Alabama or some of the markets that we're in, because the prices are so much different. But to Nick's point, most of our investors that we work with are using conventional financing. They're pulling out money from their home equity. I mean, here in California, like you said, we've been lucky enough to have a lot of appreciation. If you own your own home here or own any real estate here,
so definitely hold on to that.
Yeah,
but
it's a great
take
tool.
out. You can use against your get the HELOC, do a cash out, and then put it into. It's a great tool
to build that portfolio and build your collection of properties.
And especially like a first-time investor to get started.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And a lot easier than you think.
A good, strong day job, and you've got good credit. You can get up to 10 properties, 10 rental properties.
Wow, yes.
Yeah, so, and if you have a spouse, through conventional loan, and that's usually the best loan out there with the best interest rate for a 30-year fix. You're putting down as little as 15%, but more commonly you're putting down 20% down. And
even if you have good credit, you could do 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the investment, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And if
Even
you have
better.
a spouse,
If you have,
if you have a spouse
that.
and they have a strong day job, you can get 10 and your spouse can get 10. And there are other ways of financing as well. A lot of people ask, well, what happens when I get my 10? Then what? Well, let's figure that out.
Let's get
Once you
the
your
first,
10.
let's
It's a
get
good
the
problem
10.
to have.
Yeah.
I know,
But there's
that's-
other avenues. It's just, it costs a couple more points for those type of loans, but there are
Yes.
other
Yeah.
options out there.
But I also love that too, that you guys work with kind of more regular streams of financing.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of other avenues to invest, you do have to go hard money, or you have to take a certain loan that the pricing will be higher. Some of the non-QMs, they are a great resource, but at the same time, that is awesome that you have that availability for them. And then let's kind of talk about how you guys got started and founded this together.
I actually had a colleague get me started. I had a day job working for a company called Aldi. And I had a colleague that was buying investment properties out of state, and I'd go to lunch with him. And my friend group that we would go to lunch with, we all thought he was crazy. And one day he broke it down for me and said, it's really not that crazy.
Yeah.
It's a safe asset class to invest in. Think about when you're investing in your 401k and someone is investing in, they might be investing in Nike and Procter and Gamble, and they might be investing in all these big companies, but one of these big companies, they might make a political stance that rubs their buyer group wrong, and then their shares drop, and you have no control over that. But he said, and for this type of property, you're gonna work with a local realtor to find a property that meets your credentials. Once you find a property, you're gonna run it across your property manager and find out what they think it will rent for. And then if you do get, an accepted offer with the buyer or with the seller, then you're going to get an inspection done. The inspection is going to tell you more about that property than what you and I would personally know if you and I went and looked at the property ourselves. So you don't even need to go fly out to look at these properties. You're going to have an inspection done that's going to give you an in-depth analysis of everything that's going on with this property. And then, God forbid something happens to this property after you close on it, it's insured. So it's a really safe asset class to invest in. So my colleague Peter Skovic had me listen to a podcast on my way home that day. And so he had me listen to the Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. And it was podcast number 6. Not sure if you've listened to it or not.
No, I haven't had that one.
Okay, it was really good. I mean, it's probably his most renowned podcast episode that's referred to, because it really talks about how if you have equity in your house, you should be leveraging that equity or harvesting that equity and putting it into cash flowing rental properties, whether it be the Midwest or the Southeast, and properties that cash flow to basically the whole live where you want to live and invest where it makes sense.
That's awesome. No, that definitely makes sense. And that is amazing that, that just all came about from like a lunch.
Well, it was
a lunch
multiple
meeting.
lunches. It was multiple lunches over the course of a couple years.
No one's ever pitched me anything like that over lunch.
There's a term.
Like a gold mine.
There's a term in investing. What do they call it? Where you basically analysis paralysis.
Yes.
And so a lot of people are afraid to take the first step, and a lot of people do a lot of research, and so this was over the course of several years that he was sitting near, not in the same office, they had separate offices, but they were constantly going to lunch and talking about it. And I think you were even did a notary for being a witness for some properties.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was definitely like sales by submission over time as far as the information. And then that's it. But it correlates when we host meetups and we meet people, because that's true for every industry, and there's always going to be people that they want to know everything, and they want to know every aspect, and they want to know every fear and every worst case, best case. But reality is, until you actually do some deals, you can read every book, but experience is going to be the best teacher. And so analysis paralysis is a real thing in this industry and others as well.
How did you get them on board?
So after that,
or how did they get
listening to that podcast, came back the next day, I said, how do I get started? And my colleague Peter said, get a HELOC on your house and come back and see me. So I got a HELOC on my house for $90,000, and he gave me his realtor at the time, which was in like South Atlanta area, and he gave me his property management company. And so I followed his model, and I bought a couple houses right outside of Atlanta. And I noticed that market was really hot at the time. So I was communicating with my lender at the time, and I had more money to burn and buy more properties, and I was already getting addicted. So I asked my lender, where else should I be investing? And he said, you might want to check out Montgomery, Alabama.
That's actually a good story, though. You might dig into that a little bit more. That's a good one.
About Montgomery?
No, of why you thought that market got a little hot.
Well, so my colleague and I had the same boss, and so my colleague was very passionate about real estate, so he was talking to my boss separately in their one-to-one meetings, and he was talking to me at lunch about it. And so my boss started investing around the same time I started investing, and basically our colleague got us started, so we were basically fishing in the same pond, if you will. Well, I was sharing with my boss, I got a contract on a property in Hampton, Georgia, and I was telling him about the property, and he said, what's the address to that property? So I shared the address. He goes, you outbid me for that property. I put in an offer for that property as well. So that's when I said, you know what? I need to find another market. I'm outbidding my boss. And
I know. That's market. Funny.
But I fell onto Montgomery, Alabama, and I bought my first house out there for $59,900.
Wow.
And
what year was this?
This was in 2017.
Okay.
And the house rented for $800 a month. The house today, I still own it. It's worth about $120,000, so it's doubled in price. And this is in a market that is not known for appreciation.
Yeah.
And I'm getting $1,000 a month in rent. And I got a Fannie Freddie conventional loan on that property, and my payment is $350 a month.
Wow.
And I put $15,000 down for that one property.
And just like that, I can't believe, and it doubled. But that's also that is amazing.
Real quick, Nick, just in like the first couple of years, because that's kind of ties into how I got started, and then you can probably roll to how she got started. As far as this like a little intro, but kind of just do the quick version of your first 2 years, because
the first year I bought
what I was seeing.
5 rental properties in 2017, and I started in like July, August of 2017, and then 2018 I bought 8 properties, and then in 2019 I bought 12 properties. And then in 2020, and I think I brought you in about 2019 because I'm working a full-time job, and I started managing these properties on my own, and we started bringing in partners in 2019. I figured out how to make money come to me, if you will, by working with other investors and partnering up. So once I figured out how to do that, I realized this is endless. The possibilities endless. So I brought Derek on board to help me with the property management side and the operations of the business. And then 2020, I think we bought about
35
that year?
Yeah, because our goal was 40.
Okay. Yes, we bought 35 in 2020. And then in 2021, Emily, I met her at a meetup in Temecula. And I'll let you tell that story. That was in 2020.
2020, right before COVID.
So, yeah, we were hosting meetups and doing Zooms and doing meetups with masks and going to outdoor patios and talking real estate.
I think I showed up in January of 2020, right before everything hit the fan. And at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a career in sales and marketing and that kind of thing, but had been home for a few years with my daughters. I have 3 daughters, and was just kind of like getting the itch to do something, and had a seed planted in my head about investing in real estate, and had been going down the podcast wormhole and reading a bunch of books, and basically just trying to be a sponge wherever I could. So I showed up at this meetup in Temecula, which is where I live, right before COVID, just, all ears, didn't know what I was doing, just showed up. And kind of heard what they were doing in Alabama at the time, but then COVID hit, the meetups went dark. I don't know if we even were in touch at all, but then once you started doing meetups again, kind of probably in the summer of that year, I forget when we could, leave our houses again, but I kept showing up. And at the time I was like, okay, I'm ready to learn. I don't want to get stuck in this analysis paralysis. Here's a guy that's doing what I want to do. He's taking on partners. Sign me up. Like, I'm in, let's partner up on some houses. But I didn't want to be a silent partner. I wanted to learn as I went along. That was part of the deal for me. So I was like, I'll go on every trip you go to the market. I want to be a sponge. I want to learn everything I can. So that's what I did. And kind of through that process, visiting the market, just learning how they were analyzing houses, how they were, estimating rehabs, and, running all the numbers that you need to run to acquire a deal, and, assess if it's a good one or what to offer on it or that kind of thing. Just try to learn as much as I could. So kind of around that time, we were trying to buy as many as we could in our own portfolio. I think we had together bought maybe 8 or so, something like that, within that market. And then Nick had the idea, after going to all these meetups and talking to so many people in California that would always ask, how do you do this? How do you invest out of state? How do you manage a rehab? How do I build a portfolio out of state? How do, make it easy on me? And kind of the light bulb went off for him, and he was like, hey, we could buy a lot more properties if we're selling them too. There's definitely a desire for that in this area. People in Southern California want to invest in real estate, and it is a totally different game to do it here in your own backyard. So doing it out of state, people don't even realize what's out there in a lot of cases. So we were able to kind of start this 3-5s business beginning of 2021, where we could do some of the same things we'd been doing, but on steroids. We could buy a lot more properties, and now we had a new exit strategy where our rehab changed because, to Nick's point, to sell it as a turnkey, we want to make sure the roof, the HVAC, the water heater are all tip-top shape. So we kind of adjusted our rehab numbers. We bought a little bit differently, we rehabbed a little bit differently, but then our idea was to sell them to investors here that wanted to build that out-of-state portfolio but didn't want to do the heavy lifting themselves.
Wow.
So through that, we started buying like crazy.
and the what kind of helped catapult that, which kind of backtracking a little bit, we had this wild idea that we would do, we would host like these events where we would take investors and we would just like chaperone them to different markets that we liked, that we were seeing success in. We're like, hey, we would give you all the keys to the castle that we have access to, and so we'd have different sized groups, and sometimes it'd be like 15 plus people. We'd be like several black, SUV Escalades driving around, looking at all these houses with the intent to buy. Yeah. We would look at hundreds of houses in a weekend. They're getting a free lunch with our insurance rep. They're getting free dinners with our realtors. Yep. They're meeting our wholesalers. They're getting lunch bought for those guys. And we just said, hey, you got to get your ticket and you got to get your hotel. Everything will be taken care of, and you guys are going to learn a lot, and you're going to learn the area, and you're going to feel comfortable. And it was almost like our pitch was like, we're your money back because you're just going to love it, and everyone always loved it. And we'd show them the Capitol, we'd stay downtown, we'd show them to our favorite restaurants, and we would just tour the market, and we were just herding cattle, all the different people, once a quarter to all these areas, and that's how we started. But now, mind you, you're in Alabama, and you got these guys that are this group that's coming in, and they're bringing 10 to 15 people every few weeks from California, and then they're buying heavily on the weekend. It's like, so we were serious. And from a perspective of a property management group or a realtor, they're like, oh, these guys are really they're about it. Like, they're going to bring actual, cash to the market. And when they leave, they're going to buy real estate. So once we started doing that, when they see the validity of what we had to offer, like, we were getting deals. We were getting on the top of the list for the buy list in some of these markets in Arkansas and Georgia and Alabama.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're just sending us so many deals. And we're like, well, we can't buy them all. We're still working on funding for 10 deals back. Yeah. And that's when we said, like, why don't we do the turnkey? Let's sell these, let's sell these to the masses for those that can and want to.
Wow. And when was this? Do you guys still take them out like that?
When was the last time? I thought it was 2021 was kind of the last.
Yeah, I believe so.
We had a couple big ones.
It got to a point where we just had a really good idea of what our model depended upon, and as long as we went out there to secure the properties, then we would come back. And anytime we go out there, we invite people. Like,
we've had smaller groups.
You're welcome to go and shout us, but we haven't really hosted it the same way. Once we started 3-5s, it was like we weren't bringing on partnerships; we're selling turnkey.
Yes. Yeah. So then it was just
But we still do advertising for people. Like, I go frequently, and we'll still go as a group every quarter or so. But I still go all the time, and I always tell people as we meet them in meetups, I'm like, if you're a touch it, see it, feel it kind of person, I'm going to be here with this and this. And I've done that a few times where people have met out there, or someone's like, oh, I've got a cousin out that way, I got to go. So we try to do our best to accommodate those situations. But we haven't done any like formal groups recently.
But that's amazing how you guys all and kind of found her around along the way.
We just couldn't get rid of her.
Yeah. She's like, this is it. I'm the same way. When I found my family here, I'm like, nope. It was like instantly. I'm like, this is going to be my work family, and I'm staying.
Well, what's funny is when you're in Alabama, we're kind of catering to his schedule as well with his day job, and so I transitioned with my day job. And that's when I started getting on board with Nick. And at that time, I was looking for something different. Every time I see Nick on a holiday, he goes from 8 houses to 12.
I know, that's incredible.
Every few months. And so whenever we're going to these trips in Alabama, it's so hot out there.
Yeah.
And you're out there in the summer. A lot of times it's 3-day weekends. Like we were doing a trip, like Nick and I, where we'd show up a week before Labor Day. And we'd be out there for 13 days. So it's we're spending the 3-day holiday out there. Everyone else is going to Vegas and going to the river and stuff, and we're out in the the hottest time of the year looking at properties in Alabama,
getting
Georgia,
1,000 bug bites.
But
but
it was like this is the necessary evil. And then so when she was coming along on these trips, which maybe not on a 3-day weekend, but when it's the hottest part of Alabama, it's hot and humid, and she doesn't complain, and she puts up with us, and it's like, she really does love real estate.
She's
we do. It takes a certain personality to be able to handle this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, but when you're focused on the bigger,
Absolutely.
she sees the family, the goal, the
Absolutely.
success.
No, it's the goals
The
are there.
success,
Everyone shares the
If
dreams.
you have the vision
But
and
the grind
your
is definitely
team,
relevant.
It's gonna be right in your face.
but that's what's going to give you the day-to-day grind is that vision that that you all share. And then so you guys are in multiple markets. Some of the main, maybe your top markets, I feel like Alabama is, I've talked to him a lot also at the meetups, and Alabama I think is the hype right now. Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Missouri, I think a couple of other ones. How do you choose your markets? And what makes these locations ideal for turnkey investments?
So I think Nick kind of covered, because of his mentor was originally, I'm not sure the exact history, but he went to school out in back east.
Yep.
And so he went to school out there, and then Aldi's a global company, but their offices their corporate offices are back east as well, and in the Midwest. And so he kind of originally started in the Georgia area, and then the suburbs outside of Georgia. He migrated to Alabama from his funding guy's recommendation. He actually looked at a turnkey company back then and didn't really like what the company was doing, but he did like the area and the numbers. It was very similar to what he was seeing a few years back in Georgia. So that's how we kind of got into those markets. And then just doing market research and talking to other investors and meetups and just doing a lot of our own research data to find similar type numbers, similar markets. A lot of times the markets typically tend to be in historical areas, capital cities. All of them are in landlord-friendly states.
Yes.
Highly rent areas, colleges, family, residential.
Like schools, right?
Lower cost of living. It's just the means isn't necessary for those areas. So it's not saying that people don't invest. It's just they don't have as big of an appetite. So it's not like, I don't want to say it's so much of an ignorance thing, but it's just not necessary. Like a lot of the families, their parents have lived in the same house and they've been there for years. Mm-hmm. They may have a vacation house somewhere, but it's not like here where people it's just multiple streams of income and constantly growing is so necessary. So you're kind of finding areas where that kind of you're fitting that mold, where it's where are people not heavily investing, but there's opportunity. And even though it's not quite as relevant now, but back then, we were finding houses that needed renovation. They were everywhere, and they're in great neighborhoods, and they just been overlooked, And so it's to find such a plethora of properties that are in great shape but need the renovations necessary. That's kind of the perfect storm, is finding an area that's going to rent easily. These aren't, distressed neighborhoods. They're just homes that are distressed in good, clean, A, B, and C neighborhoods.
And they're building a lot.
Population density of about 200,000 around there. That in those type of areas. So we have a lot of communities like Montgomery, 200,000, Birmingham,
Little Rock,
400,000.
Birmingham's huge when you look at the whole outer area.
Yeah, Little Rock, 400,000 plus.
And both
Mobile,
Montgomery,
Alabama, 200,000. A lot of industry coming up in these areas, and
a lot of building, right? I feel like Georgia has been building out there. Everything is new builds. I did. I was, I'm not licensed there anymore, but as a loan officer, I was licensed out there. And it's just like, I feel like all they're doing out there is building.
Well,
So
it's
is there-
the most affordable?
They're
and that's another
definitely-
aspect of what we do. We're looking for properties that have a good purchase to rent ratio,
Yeah.
like we talked about, lower taxes. So,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes when you look at, like, I know Ohio's a big market. We don't do anything there. Taxes are high there. Taxes are high in Texas. Everyone asks, are you investing in Texas? Well, Texas doesn't. And for our model, we're trying to look for properties that have good purchase to rent ratio with insurance that's fair and for taxes that are on the lower end of the spectrum.
And this is just personal for us, but we're just not a big fan of like the really cold areas. And so, I mean, just dealing with on the plumbing side of it, I think that's just our, like, what we've experienced personally.
That would be trickier too, huh?
Typically
Like with
stay
Texas.
in the Sun Belt area. I mean, we'll get some cold temperatures, but you start getting into more the northern eastern states, you're definitely going to have to just kind of, you know, assess that, and if, you know,
If they get really cold,
if they want to deal with that type of stuff on the renovation. But it's definitely a little bit different than when you're in Alabama and Florida, where you have plumbing issues, but you don't have to worry about frozen pipes.
Yes, that
which could
Ultimately,
be a
we're
pretty
trying
big
to
cost.
tee it up for cash flow. So between the purchase to rent ratio, the low taxes, landlord friendly, minimizing risks, like those kind of things, and even the rehab we do, everything we do is to minimize that risk for the investor and tee it up for as much cash flow as possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I would say, like, our average turnkey price is in the $150,000 to $175,000 range.
Yeah.
So, you know, like Alabama fits that very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one you said even recently that one's been, all of them are like cash flowing, like Alabama.
Well, and the thing is too,
Like
like even
what-
if you have other markets that could have potentially better cash flow, like to Nick's point, like just the tax implications are just so much better in Alabama specifically.
Yes.
The other markets are some pretty good tax ones, but when you look at Alabama, like they don't constantly reassess, and I mean it shows. I mean you could get taxed. That we have properties that have been, you know, sub $300-400 for years. And so we always say the
that's
average
awesome.
is about $500-600
Wow.
for Alabama, which when you compare to what we see in California, I mean, it's just
It's definitely not that. Maybe a month. No.
That's
I don't know. Yeah, a month. 600 a month. Like even the HOAs are more than that. Like some, like
that's a great point. Most of these markets, we don't do with a lot of HOAs.
Yes.
We may have some that we came across here and there for the most
but
part.
probably a
Most of the
small,
tiny.
like
And
an
they're tiny.
annual.
Yeah.
See, those I'm fine
It's like
with.
a $59.99.
If my people
Sure,
are
exactly.
if my people are shopping, because that definitely in most, you know, in all markets, but California especially, even Texas, they're a little more, but California, it's like if you don't tell me that you're shopping like condos and then, you know, we get your pre-approval might be kind of void if we add on, like it could be 400 to 800, like some in San Diego are like
crazy.
800.
That's crazy.
And
I mean,
even
right here
though
we're in
you
Irvine,
pay it
there's so many
separate,
HOAs.
we still need to count that, like towards your. It's going to work against you in your debt to income, even though. So it's not going to be in your escrow, but we still have to count that because those are big boys. But some of those are like an annual of like $500, like $40 a month or something like that. Those we love. Those we love. $10, no problem. Definitely not going to be out here. And then, what type of investor typically seeks out turnkey properties, and why is this so appealing to them?
I think there's two prongs to those type of investors that we feel like we appeal to. First off, there's the busy professional, whether it's a doctor, a dentist, an engineer, or a six-figure earner in Southern California that wants to invest, but they don't have, they're busy, they're not going to leave their day job anytime soon, and they want to invest, you know, other than stocks and just like, you know,
they want to diversify
their portfolio. So that's one group of investors that we've had a lot of luck with. And then another investor is that investor that's done a lot of that research and that analysis paralysis, and they know what to do. They've watched all the Bigger Pockets episodes.
Yeah.
They've listened to all the podcasts.
They've been to all the meetups.
But they need something to get them started to rip the Band-Aid, and a turnkey property really is the easiest entry point to get going. And then once you get going with real estate, it's addictive, and people learn that. I think the hardest part is getting in. Once you get in, it's a game changer. You'll do it for the rest of your life. Your life will change. And no, it won't change with one. But yes, it does, because once you get started, it's a snowball effect. It's not scary anymore. You're going to continue to. Maybe it's one a year. Maybe it's one every 2 years. Maybe it's 93 in a year. But you just got to get started.
Or this, like you started at like 8, 12, and then like 35. So
in 21 we bought 93 when we brought her.
Wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
Yeah.
Wow! And so would this be? So you're saying like the investor that maybe is a little too nervous to kind of get started, it would be like maybe if they're sitting on the sidelines, like to jump into that, because this one they don't need a rehab. So it takes out, and then
we serve it up on a platter with a pretty little bow. The whole idea is for them to do as little as possible.
Yeah.
Mailbox money is the dream, right, for all of us. That's our idea, is to get it as close to that as we can by doing all the heavy lifting. The rehab's done, the property manager's there, the tenant's already paying rent. So yes, it's very easy to get started because it is kind of served up to you. But then you've ripped the Band-Aid, to Nick's point. Then you've gotten your first one, you're officially an investor, you know a little bit more about what you're doing, and then whether you continue down the turnkey path, which a lot of people do by choice, because either they're too busy or they just like that model, or maybe you pivot, maybe you start managing your own rehab.
Now you feel better, exactly. Now you're like, okay, once you see the cash flow, and then
it becomes
get
less
into
scary.
the rehab.
Every step you take, it becomes less scary.
And I love that too, how you guys pinned it down to that like demographic, like the 9 to 5, and especially in California, because a lot of people want to invest, but it's can be very overwhelming to do your first investment in this time, especially where the market's been with the rates, maybe not getting cash flow right away, and really taking that jump, I feel like for a lot has really kept them on the sidelines. So to know that there's 3 5s out there, and you guys that are basically, like you said, putting it in a bow for them is incredible, and then gets them definitely get their addiction started, because I can definitely see that. I know. I think that's amazing. 93 properties. And so you guys have been very successful, but I'm sure that it's been quite a trail to that success. So what are some of the challenges that you have encountered? Maybe the rehabs, maybe, also with the different weather, like we kind of touched on it a little bit. You stay away. But I'm sure there's still some things in that market as well. And then how did you overcome some of these challenges?
I think obviously any investor you talk at any level, whether they're doing Airbnb or if at the builder level, if they're just doing their own properties locally, I think everyone's going to have trials and tribulations with contractors and doing the work. And we've definitely seen success and failures there, but I wouldn't look at it as failures. I feel like you see it as growth, you see it as opportunity. I mean, right now in Alabama, we're doing trash out dumpster service because there's an opportunity there. We do it for ourselves. We're doing trash outs, we're doing dumpsters all the time. We're constantly looking for plumbing solutions. You're always going to be needing certain things for the business. But as we started to outgrow the third-party solutions that they had to offer, it started we have to put our entrepreneur hats, and we have to come up with solutions for ourselves, which then ends up being solutions that we can then outsource as well for others that need it. But for us, the contracting has always been difficult, but now we've had to work on building an in-house team and kind of controlling that aspect. And we're leaning on property management groups a lot more in the past. Now it's like certain markets we can do it ourselves. Certain markets, if we know that they have a good operation and we're not anywhere close to being able to get better at it soon, then we'll just continue leveraging their services. But if it's something that we're like, what, we've got this guy and this and that, and they're dedicated to us, and we know that we can have that control and the accountability, then we'll just take it under our umbrella. So it's definitely been a growing aspect of the business, and it's always going to continue to do so. But because of some of those issues, that actually put us in a better position now, and we're much more set for the future because of it. So I don't look at it as failures, but it definitely was interesting at times trying to figure out, especially when we bought 93 and you got all these contractors. Mind you, they're doing work for everybody else too. They don't,
Yeah.
They don't owe you anything.
Yeah.
Other than they're just promising you. So you do get in those situations like, well, how many houses is this guy really working on? He said he did 52 last year, and he's working all. You kind of start to see breadcrumbs, like how often they're going to your properties, really not getting the work done like you're expecting. And so that's definitely
That's
tough when it happens. And that's probably for a lot of investors that are in this, and they see people that are like us, maybe not turnkey businesses, but guys are like, hey, I have properties in Ohio or Alabama or Arkansas, and they don't have maybe the resources, and like, I want to do that, but how do you do the work? And I have to work here, and I can't just take off and go to Alabama. And that's where it's like, that's usually where a lot of people are like, well, I don't know, I understand how you guys do it out of state, but we've built the systems in place, and we've built trustworthy people that I can leave for a week, and I know that the building's not going to burn down, because we put years of work to make sure these guys, and we pay them good, and they know we have the work, and we know what is needed, and they know it's needed, and so it does take years to cultivate that. Wow. But when you're looking out on the outside, and you're like, hey, these guys are doing this. How do you do it from afar? It does look taxing.
You guys are going to start teaching it soon. Yeah,
right?
I see a course on. I see a course coming soon. It's already in next month, and there's going to be a course.
Right.
Yes, and I just want to highlight the key to success right there, like in the beginning. Basically, you have to look at those challenges as, a way of growth. And I feel like a way to grow or find the growth in it. And even though that, yes, there are challenges, now you're, I feel like you've had that mindset that whole time where it's like, now we're set up.
Yeah.
So you made it through some storms.
Well, you see it in your business too, right?
Yes.
The difference of being an employee and a business owner, right? It's like when you're an employee, you clock out for the day. There's a problem, you go tell your boss, you leave at the desk, and you walk away, and you're like, I hope it gets fixed, or else I'm out. This place sucks.
Yeah.
When you're the owner or the entrepreneur or on the business side, you wake up in that morning, that problem hasn't moved, it hasn't changed, it hasn't gone anywhere. Like, you have to be in a position, or you have to put someone in a position to make it go away or fix it. That's it.
You definitely and as an entrepreneur too, you have to definitely have that mindset and that expectation with yourself, like, you better keep going. Like, just keep. You have to have that set on.
So
like
fight or flight, or was it fight or flight?
Like, if this is your vision, you got to have the vision. You got to have the roadmap, and whatever comes your way, you just have to know that that's where you're meant to be, and you got to figure it out. So, I feel like that's. Especially 2023, I think that was a tough year for all of us, or all industries, or a lot of, like you said, growth, a lot of challenges.
New challenges.
Yeah, a lot of newer challenges. But as long as you have that mindset, I feel like that's all that matters, and you just got to keep pushing through. And
things are always going to encounter, especially in this type of industry. I mean, real estate. At the end of the day, people always need homes. They always need mortgages. They always need a place to live. They need shelter. So we're in a good sector. Is it going to be sexy every day? No.
Yeah.
But long term, there's always going to be corrections, and there's going to be some lulls and some valleys. But ultimately, I think it's people in success always just never get too high, never get too low.
Yep.
And I think that was our motto in 2023. It's like, let's not get too low. We couldn't get too high in 2021. We were buying houses, even though it is exciting.
Yeah.
And there were some fun moments, but it's like you got to just stay even keeled.
Yep.
And I think that's served us well. And a little bit still doing it in 2024, but I think we're all still kind of seeing a little bit better outlook.
We're betting on the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Oh my God, we're already almost there. I feel like. No, we just wrapped up the first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm betting on the fourth quarter too.
I know. If not the fourth quarter, the first quarter of 2025.
I know. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
I know, because I feel like we said that.
Back.
Yeah, I feel like we're saying that, okay, 2022, the end of 2022, and then 2023 started. Yeah. And then 2023 started, and we're like, all right, maybe the end. Yes. And then, now I do definitely think, a lot, especially pushing through 2023, I feel like things are starting to come together, but I'm still the same. I think this is going to be a great year for the real estate industry. Definitely going to be some speed bumps still, but
I think think the buyer pause is starting to finally.
We're seeing it.
Yeah. There's more
2023
education out there.
2021, we could not keep a list. We had so many people interested. 2022, we started to have a list, but the interest was still there, and we're still having some. 2023, we realized we need to grind to sell some of these properties that we've built up. And the thing is, we've had great conversations. We do a lot of meetups. We do best meeting for dinners and meeting investors one-on-one, and point blank, investors were holding their cash, and the majority of investors in 2023 were like, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. They would say it in a roundabout way, and they're waiting for something better to come along. And truth be told, like, just we were the
they're still sitting there.
We're the cleanest short shirt in the dirty clothes hamper, like David Green says. But, it's getting better. We're already seeing it. We're getting a lot of buyer activity.
It's going to go
in this
down.
first quarter.
The rates are going to go down.
Yeah, they are going down, and we're already starting to see it. And I think we'll, like I said,
a nice little pipeline now of we're playing catch up.
Definitely building momentum.
Like I said, we've got investors that have been confident in us and confident with what they want to do. It's just they're waiting for the time to be right, and everyone's waiting, right? But eventually, these are high net worth individuals. I mean, they're also impatient people as well. And they want to own properties. Like, trust me, they want to have a portfolio.
You want to get in there
we
because
have savvy investors that are buying now, and they're you can,
they want assets, and the dollar's not going up, and so there's some benefits.
And that is, I mean, that's where we're trying to educate as well. Like, the thing is yes, it was a tough time and the rates were high, but who's been buying? People are buying. There's 400. I think they put like a statistic of like 400,000 purchases still going on. Like, in I don't know if it was weekly or monthly, or it was. For us to hear that, we were like, oh, where are all these? It's still happening. But most of them are investors. Like, why are the investors still buying the property? Because they understand that the appreciation, I mean, they're still going to be building the equity. Like, in a year when they can lower their payment, there's still, you could have, I think right now, I don't know if it's different in each state, but like 7% in like California that it's been going up.
But you were talking about Georgia, right? Like the new development.
Oh, yeah.
Which is same Texas.
Which is going to bring up your guys' properties.
But that's the same. We've ran the numbers. And I mean, we're always reevaluating and trying to find new ways of like, oh, should we go on the new development? Should we do this and that? And you just can't build these things new.
For the price you can buy.
No.
And so the inventory is still so relevant. And that's what people don't realize when they're looking at all the mainstream media and all this stuff going on. They're like, oh, we're waiting for this bubble, waiting for this. But it's like, the bubble's not going to happen because these companies are buying it. They're not going to go back on the market. Their investors are going to buy this house, and they're going in a portfolio. They're going to get refied, and you'll never see that property in the market for 30 years. And you're seeing that across the nation. And
the bottom's not. We don't believe the bottom's going to fall out. To Derek's point, you can't buy a house now that's on the market in the most of the markets are in. You can't rebuild that house for what you can buy it for.
No.
Does that make sense?
And we had a house burned down, and it was like crazy with the cost for it. After all the materials costs, and especially for a new build, they got to do the sand and the base and the concrete work. Like, just that aspect alone, that's like the whole renovation cost we would do for our turnkey. Just the base of the concrete and just to wrap the house.
But still, when I said that there were a lot of building going on in Georgia, I was more referring
growth.
Exactly, because you guys were in that market, and the property that you have, because they're building so much, like you said, they're just distressed houses in great neighborhoods. Those great neighborhoods are they're building and building, like they're doing it out there.
There's a lot of new areas in Georgia,
the people
Alabama.
that are investing with you guys, that you guys got these great properties, like even a couple of years ago or within the last few years, that's incredible. Like it's still going to be a great.
Well, we look at it too.
With the market that's around.
What Atlanta was several years ago.
That's gone up.
I'm not a fortune teller or anything. I don't know what city's going to be next. But like, if you talk to anybody that lived in Atlanta 20 years ago, they'd be like, I can't believe where it is now.
Yeah.
Montgomery and Birmingham's in like 2.5 hours from Atlanta.
Yeah.
So we're always looking at, I guess, what do we call it, secondary, tertiary markets that are outside the big cities. You don't never know which city it's going to be, but if you stay within the realm and just have posture in those cities to have some properties and have a little bit of some boots on the ground. When it does hit, you're ahead of the game. So we're kind of postured in some of these areas outside of, Huntsville we're in, which is 2.5 hours from Nashville. We're in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is an hour and a half from Nashville. We're in Jacksonville, Florida, but like the outskirts. Jacksonville, Florida is actually a big city and populace-wise in Florida. A lot of people don't realize that.
And only like an hour out of the city.
Yeah, so when you're in these areas, you don't know which city is going to be, top ranked in the nation, what's going to happen. But what we know is there's always going to be the next city that's going to have a good cash flow.
Also, people are going to migrate to where affordability is.
Exactly.
We focus on markets that are affordable.
Yeah.
So with that being said,
we're getting a lot of people. Have you noticed, by the way, the uptick? We're getting so many more people moving, especially like from the Virginias, the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. They're moving to Alabama because we self-rent. Like we're managing, we also rent them. We're looking at candidates. We're seeing where they're coming from. Yep. So being on the front line of it, these people are coming from other cities. They're not far, but if you look at the cost difference from like South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Texas versus in Alabama or Georgia. Like, it's a pretty big difference. But the living same, when you actually visit from California, you're like, shit kind of looks the same.
Yeah.
You're like, they're very similar in some parts of the areas. You're like, okay, a lot of similar restaurants, similar style.
Now everything's getting more mainstream.
For sure.
But it's also, too, a lot of people are probably, same thing, you guys are doing the real estate over there. People are now, all the people from California are, I feel like almost putting businesses, opening up the same mainstream.
Yeah, all the big stuff. I mean, you
exactly.
Go to downtown, like
so
Montgomery,
now you can see them.
There's Whole Foods on the east side. You've got, all the different Kroger's is out there. They have Aldi. These are popular mainstream. All the food, Jimmy John's was like downtown. This is all the popular franchise that you're like, I'm surprised this is in Alabama.
All right.
So it's there.
Mm-hmm. And to wrap up here, so we're going to talk about basically looking ahead. Where do you see the turnkey markets going? We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but ultimately I want to hear from each of you. So which market this year do you favor the most, and why? Like one of your markets that you're working in that you kind of think is going to be the best of this year, and I'll hear from each of you.
Be pretty similar, but we are entrenched in Montgomery.
Okay.
Yeah, so we manage over 100 doors in Montgomery.
Oh wow.
The taxes are the lowest in Montgomery. The purchase to rent ratio is pretty hard to beat in Montgomery, and the prices in the sub twos are pretty easy to come by.
Yeah.
So it's a great market. We have a team in that market. We've got Derek oversees a team of 10 maintenance technicians out there, so we handle all of our rent readies, everything. So we do the property management and everything. So we've got that market cornered.
And that cash flow is good.
Cash flow is the
best.
Hard to beat.
Yeah.
Show me another market that's got better cash flow, and I'll pick it apart.
It's also very centrally located.
Yeah.
So like the team that we have there, in a pinch, we can get them to Birmingham, we get them to Mobile, we can get them to these other markets, and we still have other resources out in those other areas. But like I said, it's good to have a backup whenever you have like some sort of an issue or something that could be out of the scope of maybe someone else's experience. So that just a central location, Montgomery is very central to all those other markets that we're in, and it just happens to be our best boots on the ground.
So I would say we're always going to be in Montgomery, Birmingham, because it's the closest in proximity, and it's Montgomery on steroids. We are going to be working on building a team in Birmingham, and then Columbus, Georgia, is about an hour
in between,
right on the border.
An hour east of Montgomery. That market, I really do believe, is ripe for the picking.
It's going to start booming.
Yeah,
it is. And there's a river that goes downtown. It's just a very clean downtown with a lot of opportunity and historical district.
And then Little Rock. Those would be the markets that I would
focus on.
Yeah, I'd say Little Rock, Oklahoma. I was going to throw the curveball. I was born in Arkansas, so I've always had like a little soft spot for Arkansas. But we have a market director out there that's done a good job cultivating workforce to kind of help us with things that needed. We have good real estate, agents that can help us find deals, wholesalers. We do have some solutions for the work getting done. It's not too far from Oklahoma, Tulsa, some other areas that we've seen some success in, that we have some colleagues that we, can kind of piggyback on when we need to get stuff done. But Little Rock is very similar market to Birmingham. 450,000 people. You have a lot of suburb areas that have great opportunity for growth, and the rental markets are great. I'd say the tenants are actually have a little bit more steady, long-term aspect, as far as them not moving as much. There's something about that market where, like, once they move into a house and they like it, they do tend to stay.
Just years, and that's
good,
perfect.
It's a very similar. Alabama, maybe not quite as is south, so maybe not quite as hot, but it is, it's a similar market, so we like it.
And for you, is that your...
Same thing. I think one of the things we learned is to really hone in on where our teams are. Because when we bought so many, we did spread ourselves pretty thin in multiple markets, which was great. There's a lot of good markets out there. But in terms of having control over it and being able to manage it in-house and to offer that to our investors that, hey, we can also manage this property for you. We're still the contact.
That's amazing.
We can offer incentives, that kind of thing. It's nice to kind of keep everything closer to home. So Alabama all the way.
Oh my God. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Tiffany.
And if you guys are intrigued by the potential of the turnkey investments, do not forget to like or share. And if you want to get in touch with 3-5's Turnkey Properties and get access to all of their properties, I will have all their info below.
Thank you.
And thank you
guys.
guys.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.